Greetings, all praising the King, Rastafari, blessed to be. We are speaking about protection. Defense. That is the objective of these reports. That is what they are. If anybody would like to volunteer to be interviewed, to cast input, that would be welcome. You know, the Babylon sells itself on wizardry. They use sophisticated operations to remain in power. Of course, this is done through communication channels, sometimes referred to as media or news, going beyond, just news. You have content, and the content is meant to generate a reaction in the viewer. The content is studied so that the reactions are calculated, sometimes referred to as predictive analysis or input to output mapping. We've been discussing this over the years. Although the language was not known as far as the terms to describe these activities, the activities themselves were explained thoroughly. This is part of the process of developing this artificial intelligence. People are being identified based on a DNA sequence that then has a value assigned to it. However, the behaviors are then monitored, and that value becomes modified based on the activities of that person, that individual. This becomes the new sequence to identify. This is one component of this design of man. Today there is an exercise underway. Most of what man does is psychological. Man seeks to get inside your head, to say, don't let him get to you. It's easier to say, to be aware of your reaction, and what the outcome is, how is it perceived, is essential to fighting for your life, because that's what's happening. Now, there's a physical life and there's a spiritual life. In this instance, we could be referring to both. But yet, when you give into the way of man, you have a spiritual death. The scripture speaks of this as the hardening of the heart. The Lord turns and it is only through a rebirth of remittance of wrong to make right. Man seeks to destroy your soul. Man's way is not highway. The Redeemer. The language that is used must be done carefully, for the Babylon seeks to use your words against you. There is also a manner that must be observed so that I act accordingly to present myself as a representative of my King. Selassie. This is something that man seeks to break down. In the end times, it is said that our saints will be born and even prevailed against. So let us not dream that the victory is necessarily ours at this given present moment. For even the martyrs had shed their blood for the cause. And I must recognize these sacrifices and fight for those that came before. To separate oneself from the evil device of man. Even the herb, they say you must not use, so therefore we must use. And the pure herbs with the good vibes. It is something to be taken seriously. The man seeks to frame you. He's going to portray you in his image. He gathers his material, that is the content. It could be a phone conversation you had. It could be a video. It could be through a camera of a driving incident. But that man's getting information on every single one that he can. This is a book that I was reading from 1996 and 94. It was signed by the guy himself. Didn't even realize that till now. Anyway, it's a fraud. Basically, he's going to tell you about the past operations. You got to wonder how somebody is going to come out and say, I was a spy for the Canadians, and he's going to publish his picture, as if it's gravy. When you think about that, you say to yourself, wait a minute, what's the deal with that? Because basically he was supposed to come out as a rebel. He was supposed to show what's going on. Not in really, maybe this whole book should be read, but it would be reasonable to assume that he doesn't actually condemn the practice of spying. He's informing the public of what's been happening. But this is all information that the so-called adversaries already had. Now you can say so-called because the results of these conflicts are more power to the man. So that if you take, for example, the conflict with the United States and Russia, well, because of that, there's been a built-up military presence. Now, what is that military then used for? Well, what was it used for? The Middle East, other regions of the globe. It's for protecting assets. It's for protecting personnel that are extracting material from the earth. It's to keep the economic engine running around the globe. And then that equipment that's built up is given to the lower levels, local police, state police. See, that then protects those within those regions that possess the wealth. So when these countries have these conflicts, the tax money goes to building up the equipment, which, by the way, still also goes to the most wealthiest people. Let's not act like some billionaire don't have a tank or don't have helicopters, military-grade helicopters. Let's not act. That's where that technology comes from. That's where the development, the research comes from. And all this sophisticated weaponry that's coming out today is a result of these operations within the military for research and development. And that goes to biological weapons, chemical weapons. So it's a way for the public to pay for the security of their oppressor. And it's not like those that are being, demonstrated as victims of spying in this novel don't know. It's not like they don't know that they're being spied on and what kind of procedures are happening. What really happens in a book like this is it's a cloak. It takes people's attention away from what is to come, because it doesn't mention mass surveillance through the internet. Now, this came out in 1994. This was like 2 years before the internet. So the whole purpose of that internet was to monitor people, and eventually they would begin to develop this design that we've discussed. When you hear, what's being talked about and what's not being talked about, and the magnitude of what's not being talked about, then you have a responsibility to speak on it. If you know what's right. That is I duty, to inform others so they may protect themselves. Now, when you look at that badge, what does that badge represent? It represents a shield. Sometimes it's shaped like this. That's what it is. It's a shield. That man may say you're a terrorist. So sometimes it's necessary to do something humorous to show, no, you're human. You just see things for what they are. You're not going to accept what you've been told because you know what the incentives are for those that are doing the telling. The beauty of a social media site, if there is one, is that they practice discrimination to promote their own cause. They do this through the view counts, the subscribers. They've got the technology, the equipment, computers they call bots, to boost their views, subscribers, and listening. So they feel like they've got some kind of edge. However, they're wrong. They defeated themselves. Because now you are able to show that even though you don't have those incentives, you continue because you know you are in the right course. The goal is to connect the dots, to identify the true criminals, how they conduct their activities and get away with their crimes.